Alright, what's up guys, got another video of what if Anakin Skywalker and Obi Wan joined the rebellion. So I started a Cash App if you want to donate, if you have a video idea you want to see, and if you do, I'll try to make it into a short or a video. You don't have to donate, it's up to you, but it'll be linked down below if you want to, along with my other channels. But if you like this type of content, then be sure to subscribe for more what if / fanfics, lore, comics, reviews, and video essays about all things Star Wars. But with all that out of the way, why don't we just dive right on in. So the story starts during the events of Revenge of the Sith. Anakin and Obi Wan are dueling on Mustafar. The fiery hellscape surrounds the two Jedi, enemies who were once brothers. Obi Wan pleaded with Anakin, telling him that he chose the wrong path and the Sith were evil, but he was having none of it. The chosen one wasn't listening. Like normal, Obi Wan gets the high ground and Anakin becomes arrogant and goes for it, which results in his arm and both his legs getting cut off. Anakin still burns from the lava, but instead, Obi Wan doesn't leave him. "Damn you, Anakin! I should leave you to die for what you've done, but that's not the Jedi way. I won't let you die. I won't let my brother die." Anakin is fading in and out of consciousness, but all he can feel right now is unending rage as he screams, "I hate you!" Kenobi picks up Skywalker and takes him back to Padme's ship, and as C-3PO and R2-D2 look after Padme, Obi-Wan launches into hyperspace towards Polis Masa. However, Palpatine shows up and senses into the Force that his apprentice is feeling unending rage, but he isn't here, and he surmises that Obi-Wan took Anakin, which means that he lost. Palpatine felt disgusted, but as he looked at the lava embankment, he felt something. He didn't need an apprentice, he was the Sith Master. He smiled. Anakin was a failure, but Palpatine was the Master. He would create his empire, and he would rule it as Emperor. And he would find a way to become immortal so he could rule the galaxy for the rest of time. He would use his pawns well though. But in this moment, Palpatine sensed where Anakin was heading and decided to follow. But first he made some arrangements for a second ship to land with the Grand Inquisitor and Darth Maul. He set Maul free. They were going to end this once and for all. Palpatine headed to Polis Masa, following Anakin's trail through the Force. At Polis Masa, Anakin was undergoing extensive surgery for his injuries. Padme was giving birth. But after remembering what Anakin did, she couldn't look at him the same. Even though she was still alive, she was able to barely make it. Obi-Wan and Yoda watched through the glass as medical droids took care of Luke and Leia, and he watched in another room as Anakin was being put in a suit that would allow him to survive. Anakin's suit was different than in canon. This was made from the best parts they had available, and he would not need to wear a mask. Unlike Palpatine, who created Vader's suit to cause him pain and to weaken him, his new suit would make him stronger and would not leave him in pain. The surgery finished and Anakin opened his eyes to see a medical droid checking on him. He tried getting up, but he was restrained. But all that was on his mind was Padme, and he wanted to know if she was okay. He broke free from the restraints and looked at his new hand and arm. He looked in the window and saw the reflection of himself. He was now more machine than man. As he tried to exit the medical chamber, Obi-Wan walked through the door and locked eyes with Anakin. Obi-Wan was about to speak when suddenly they both felt an explosion that rocked all of Polis Masa. Palpatine arrived with the Grand Inquisitor and Darth Maul, along with a legion of clones. Anakin and Obi-Wan would figure out what to say to each other later, but as they walked out and ran to Padme's room, they saw Yoda engaging in a duel against Palpatine, the Grand Inquisitor, and Maul. The two watched as Yoda cut down the Grand Inquisitor and force-pushed Maul against the wall. But Palpatine ordered the clones to fire, which Yoda easily blocked. But as he blocked, he looked back and saw Anakin and Obi-Wan and simply nodded at the two. Palpatine used this, and before anyone could react, went in and stabbed Yoda from behind. But Yoda held on and used the last bit of life he had to bring down the ceiling to allow Anakin and Obi-Wan to escape. All that could be seen and unheard was Palpatine's cackle as Yoda dropped to the ground dead, and the ceiling came crashing down. Anakin heard Palpatine speak, saying, "You were a failure, young Skywalker. You were a useful tool, but I will find and kill you, your Jedi Master, your whore, and your filthy spawn." Anakin's eyes widened. It had all been a ruse. He was nothing but a tool from the very start. What had he done, he thought? He helped to wipe out the Jedi. He killed innocent people. He killed children. In that moment, Anakin returned to the light, and Obi-Wan saw as tears welled up in Skywalker, and his eyes turned from yellow back to normal. Obi-Wan smiled, but he told Anakin they needed to find Padme and get out of there. They found Bail by Padme's door, but a blaster bolt fired and struck Bail in the head, killing him. Anakin and Obi-Wan looked back and saw 10 clone troopers aimed directly at them. Anakin used the Force to push them back, but as he looked inside, he saw Padme holding both Luke and Leia, and a tear fell down his face. Padme saw Anakin awake, and the look she gave him told him everything he needed to know. Obi-Wan and C-3PO helped Padme and the twins to an emergency escape ship with Anakin following. They opened the hangar doors thanks to R2-D2, and after boarding the ship, launched into hyperspace. But as they launched, Anakin looked out the window and saw Palpatine who looked at him, and the Sith Lord smiled. After jumping into hyperspace, Obi-Wan had C-3PO look after Padme and the twins, and for the first time since Mustafar, Anakin and Obi-Wan would talk. The Master sat down across from his apprentice, and no words were spoken until Anakin spoke up. I was wrong, Master. About it all, about everything. I'm sorry. Obi-Wan sighed. An apology won't cut it, Anakin. What you did, you betrayed everyone and everything you knew, and now the Jedi are gone. Anakin winced at that. He remembered the look on his wife's face. It was one of fear and disgust. He didn't blame her. He was going to right his wrongs. Anakin put his head down and told Obi-Wan they could head to Tatooine and Padme and the twins could stay with Owen and Beru. They would watch over them. The ship exited hyperspace and reached Tatooine and landed near the moisture farm. C-3PO held Padme and the twins inside, and Obi-Wan talked to Owen and Beru, as Anakin just looked from afar. He saw Padme turn back, and her face this time was one of sadness and betrayal. Obi-Wan finished speaking to Owen, and they agreed to let Padme and the twins live there, and Obi-Wan and Anakin would watch over them. But Obi-Wan heard the landing dock pull back up, and he looked at Anakin as they closed. Anakin told his master to take care of Padme and his children. He didn't deserve the right to be a father or a husband after what he did. Padme heard this and ran back, begging Anakin to stop and to stay. But he smiled and told her he was sorry and that he loved her. Luke and Leia. He looked at his children. They would be safe here, safe away from him. Anakin closed the hatch and jumped into the pilot seat, and he launched the ship into hyperspace, looking back at his master and his family. He knew what he needed to do. 5 years passed and Anakin had become a ghost. Obi-Wan and Padme had heard nothing from him, and Palpatine and the Empire's search for Skywalker led nowhere. But there were talks of an uprising starting, a rebellion forming across the galaxy. During this time, Anakin traveled to the old Jedi temples like Tython and Yavin 4. He indoctrinated himself back into the light, spending weeks to months at each temple, meditating, facing his darkness. Anakin also made contact with Mon Mothma and other senators who didn't believe in the Empire, and they formed a group which began to grow and eventually formed into the rebellion. Palpatine had suspected this and increased the speed of the building of the Death Star. It was nearly complete, and Palpatine smiled from his throne room as he knew his plans were coming to fruition. During the 5 years, Anakin had also reunited with Ahsoka, and he finished her training, and the two bonded over the shared tragedy of all the death and destruction around them. Anakin had visited Tatooine a few times, keeping an eye on his family from afar. They didn't need him. That's what he thought, at least. Anakin was thankful for Obi-Wan, but he knew his mission. Anakin went on various missions for the rebellion under the pseudonym Fulcrum. The spies in the Empire leaked information about the Death Star to the rebellion. However, this was all a ruse by Palpatine to lure Anakin out of hiding. The rebels took the bait and Mon Mothma informed Anakin about the Death Star, but Skywalker felt like this was a trap. He knew Palpatine. He was a schemer, and he would do anything to kill Anakin. This brought Anakin's thoughts back to his family. The rebel base was on Yavin 4, but that's when Anakin heard an explosion and a blast of fire sent him flying. The base had been bombarded from above. Palpatine had somehow found them. Anakin got up and looked around, his vision blurry. His suit was a bit damaged, but he could still breathe. He looked around for survivors, but everyone he found was dead. As he was searching, he felt his communicator beep and opened it and saw Ahsoka. However, she was bloodied and bruised and was being held up by her hair. That's when he heard that cackle, that laugh, but he didn't see Palpatine. But he knew he was there, even if he wasn't there physically. He was there through someone else. That's when Maul revealed himself, and he licked Ahsoka's tear, and she apologized to Anakin. And in the background, he saw a desert. He saw Tatooine. They had found Padme and his children. Maul laughed. "It is too late, Skywalker. My master is nearly finished." Anger poured into Anakin. His rage was building. But that's when Maul ignited his saber, gutting Ahsoka and killing her as Anakin watched her lifeless body fall to the ground. Kenobi is next. The transmission ended, and all Anakin could see was red. He immediately left, but a legion of stormtroopers and inquisitors stood in his way. However, he pushed them all back with the Force, and with blinding speed cut all of them in half with one strike. After dealing with that, he found a rebel ship intact and jumped into hyperspace towards Tatooine. But Palpatine predicted this, and an Empire armada followed behind him. Anakin could sense this and called in for reinforcements, and every remaining rebel ship and soldier headed to Tatooine. Obi-Wan hadn't spoken to Anakin since he'd left, but he didn't need to keep his word of protecting Padme, Luke, and Leia. He watched the kids grow up, and it put a smile on his face, knowing they knew nothing of tragedy. He wanted to keep it that way. Padme still couldn't forgive Anakin, but in her heart, she still loved him, and she missed him. She wanted their children to know their father. They asked about him countless times, and every night she would tell them stories about their father, Anakin Skywalker, the hero of the Jedi and the Republic, and how he couldn't be here right now as he was fighting the evil Empire to bring back freedom for the galaxy. Luke and Leia saw their father as a hero and wanted to meet him. However, on this day, everything changed. Obi Wan was in his hut meditating when he felt Ahsoka and the Force on Tatooine and ran outside and saw Maul gut her. That man, he killed his master, his lover, and now the apprentice of his own apprentice. Maul looked over and smiled. Kenobi. As he kicked Ahsoka's corpse out of the way and reignited his double-bladed lightsaber, Obi-Wan ignited his own saber and took a defensive stance. And as Maul yelled, he had been waiting for this day for over 15 years. Obi-Wan didn't say anything, and as Maul leapt in for a strike, Obi-Wan blocked it and unleashed his own attack, cutting Maul's saber in half and cutting Maul in half. This time, straight down the middle. As he was about to die, Maul laughed and told him this was all a distraction. As Maul fell apart into two pieces, Obi-Wan realized what he meant. Padme and the twins were in danger. He hopped on a speeder and raced towards the moisture farm, but saw it ablaze, but he also saw a ship. He jumped off and ignited his blue saber and walked inside. He saw the bodies of Owen and Beru, but no signs of Luke or Leia. But that's when he saw Anakin, but he was holding someone. Obi-Wan looked up. He was too late. Anakin had come out of hyperspace and felt into the Force and could feel Obi-Wan and Maul. He knew Obi-Wan could handle himself, so he would find his family, but when he landed near the moisture farm, he saw it in flames. He walked inside and saw the same sights as Obi-Wan, but that also included Padme. His wife had been slaughtered, cut down like an animal, by two sabers. He looked around for Luke and Leia, but they were gone, and as he walked over to his wife's body, he caressed her face. Anakin apologized for not being there. He promised Padme that he would find their children, and he would protect them no matter what. There was only one man who could do all this. Anakin gritted his teeth as he angrily said, Palpatine. But at that moment, Obi-Wan walked in and saw Anakin holding Padme. They looked at each other and only nodded. No words needed to be spoken. They would find Luke and Leia and finally put an end to Palpatine. Anakin carried Padme's body outside and he buried her next to his mother, along with Owen and Beru. Anakin and Obi-Wan stood at their graves, and Skywalker finally spoke to Kenobi. Master, I need your help to stop this. The rebellion needs us. The galaxy needs us. Obi-Wan smiled. He saw, even after Padme's death, Anakin had come back to the light. Obi-Wan responded, I wouldn't have it any other way, my young apprentice. They both nodded and headed for Anakin's ship, but at that same moment they saw the Death Star come out of hyperspace in the atmosphere of Tatooine. They saw the moon base and knew this would end here. Hundreds of starships exited hyperspace, both Empire and Rebel alike. As Anakin and Obi-Wan jumped into the ship, they knew where Palpatine would be, the Death Star. As the twin suns started to set, the Battle of Tatooine began. Hundreds of starships blasting at one another in space, in the atmosphere, and in the skies of the desert wasteland itself. The people of Tatooine watched in awe. Star Destroyers blasted the rebel ships, and X-Wings and TIE Fighters blasted at one another, dogfighting throughout the air. Anakin and Obi-Wan raced through the skies, blasting any Empire ships out of the way. Mon Mothma contacted Anakin and said this was all the forces they had. There was no one else. Anakin smiled and told her this would be enough. This would end today. The call ended and they made it through the atmosphere into the vacuum of space and headed towards the Death Star. On the moon base, Palpatine sat in his throne room, royal guards by his side, with Luke and Leia in chains beside him. He cackled, laughing. This would be the end of the Chosen One and the rebellion. Anakin told Obi-Wan to take control of the weapons and he blasted TIE Fighters out of the way. They were getting closer to the Death Star, but more TIE Fighters were coming out to defend it. Anakin called for an X-Wing formation, and 10 X-Wings formed a V formation around their ship, 5 on each side, forming a V. They blasted through TIE Fighters and Empire ships, but each X-Wing and Rebel inside was destroyed in the process. Anakin thanked them for their sacrifice, but this allowed them to reach the hangar bay of the Death Star, and Obi-Wan yelled at Anakin to slow down, but Skywalker smiled as he didn't slow down, but sped up. They crashed in the hangar bay, destroying multiple ships and killing dozens of Storm and clone troopers. They collided with the wall, but made it inside somewhat intact. Anakin laughed and Obi-Wan just sighed, but they didn't have time as the ship was quickly surrounded. But Anakin and Obi-Wan saw R2-D2 and C-3PO toss a bomb that exploded, killing them all. They looked at each other and thanked the Force the droids were on their side. They exited and ignited their sabers. Anakin had received blueprints of the Death Star from Mon Mothma, but realized it's what Palpatine wanted. As they were running, they felt something and realized the Death Star was powering up. Anakin looked through the plans and discovered a small flaw, an open exhaust port. He contacted Mon Mothma and transmitted the weakness and told her to send their best pilot to blow up the Death Star. And she said he was their best pilot. And he told her to send the second best pilot then. She smiled and told them to end things and get the hell out of there. He nodded and ended the call. Anakin and Obi-Wan raced to the Death Star, cutting down every stormtrooper and clone in sight. They made their way to the throne room and walked inside and saw Luke and Leia chained next to Palpatine. They looked and realized that their father was here, and they began crying. Anakin told them it would be alright, and Palpatine began cackling, saying they would both die, and he would turn the twins into his new apprentices. Lord Vader, you are a failure. I will make an example of you by turning your children to the dark side. Palpatine ordered his royal guards to kill them, and the four clad in red armor with electrostaffs walked forward. Anakin and Obi-Wan with their sabers ignited engaged in combat, with Obi-Wan taking on two and Anakin taking on the other two. They were quickly cut down, with Obi-Wan striking one across the chest and then decapitating the other, and Anakin crushed the electrostaff of one, and then picked him up by the throat and slammed him against the other, jamming a saber into both, killing them at the same time. Palpatine sighed. If you want something done right, do it yourself, just like when I killed your whore. Her screams were like music to my ears, Lord Vader. Anakin just stared at him, as Luke and Leia started crying as they remembered their mother being slaughtered in front of them. Palpatine laughed and pulled out and ignited two crimson sabers. He leapt forward with a Sith scream and attacked Obi-Wan, who blocked both blades but struggled under the strength. Anakin tried to slash Palpatine, but he was outsped and pushed away by the Force. Palpatine unleashed a torrent of lightning toward Anakin, who blocked it, but Obi-Wan engaged Palpatine in lightsaber combat. Obi-Wan's form 3 against Palpatine's ever-changing style between every form. The lightning stopped and Anakin joined in the duel. Palpatine took them both on and blocked strikes from each Jedi with each saber. He went for a quick jab and cut off Obi-Wan's right arm and kicked him away. He then engaged Anakin in a one-on-one. Anakin's suit was powerful, but he was still not faster than Palpatine, who cut off his left arm and force pushed him back near Obi-Wan. The Emperor then unleashed a torrent of force lightning, electrocuting both, and Palpatine laughed, saying this was the end, and he tried to move, but realized he couldn't. Obi-Wan held his legs down with the Force, while Anakin rushed forward and decapitated Palpatine. His body dropped to the floor, and Anakin helped Obi-Wan up and then freed Luke and Leia. They all ran through the Death Star, with Anakin and Obi-Wan killing any stormtroopers or clones who got in the way. They ran to their ship. While still heavily damaged, it was still able to function, and they flew out of the hangar bay as the rebel pilot launched the torpedoes into the exhaust port and blew up Death Star. This gave the chance for the rebellion to push back the remaining Empire forces and force them to retreat. The rebellion had won. On the ship, Anakin hugged his kids with his one remaining arm and introduced himself as their father, and apologized for not being able to save their mom. They cried, but they hugged their dad, happy that he was with them. Obi-Wan smiled. And over the course of the next 10 years, the rebellion, with the help of Anakin and Obi-Wan, crushed the remnants of the Empire, which began to fall apart after Palpatine's death. The rebellion formed another new republic, with Mon Mothma becoming Chancellor. Anakin and Obi-Wan began training Luke and Leia as Jedi and started to rebuild the Jedi Order, with other surviving Jedi like Caleb Dune and Cal Kestis joining the new Jedi Order. And instead of using an old temple, Anakin built a new temple on Tatooine, the burial planet of his mother and wife, and he would usher in a new era of peace throughout the galaxy, with Obi-Wan and his children by his side. And that's the story, so let me know what you think of it down below. But yeah, I do like a good Anakin and Obi-Wan centric story, or, just anything that has to do with those two in Star Wars, and I kind of wanted to make that the forefront of this. The first half was kind of like Anakin coming back to the light and coming to terms with everything and, leaving his family, but near the end, he meets back up with Obi-Wan. They kill Palpatine, defeat the Empire, and, everything's all good and dandy, except, it got pretty dark at some moments, especially with some of the deaths I added in, like Padme. Yeah, that shit was pretty gruesome, and the way Palpatine described her, especially as Anakin's whore. I think he just was saying all that just to fuck with Anakin, which, I feel like in retrospect, he wouldn't probably say that, but, if he did fail and Anakin survived and joined the light, then I would say he would probably go after Anakin and he would fuck with him, like, mentally also. But yeah, I had fun writing this, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, be sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. And let me know down below what other videos you want to see, what is comics, fanfics, reviews, just anything Star Wars, and I will catch you all in the next one. Also, go check out the other channels and go donate to the Cash App if you want. But yeah, I will see you all in the next one. Peace.